So we will now talk about your nutrition needs during pregnancy, and we'll begin with the first trimester. Growth happens so fast during gestation that if we maintained the same rate of growth that happens during gestation, and if we maintained that after delivery, at age 1, our infants would weigh 160 pounds, and by age 20, they would be 20 feet tall. So this just underscores how much growth and development happens during pregnancy, and correspondingly, how important nutrition is. It's also important to understand that there are specific time periods for different levels of development that happen. We call these critical periods. So for example, in the first 3 to 4 weeks post-conception is when the majority of the baby's brain and spinal cord are developed. During this time, folate is absolutely crucial to ensure that development happens at a good pace. And if we have any folate deficiency, there will be some inadequacies in this development that will be irreversible. So this is why we recommend women start taking a prenatal with folate even before they know that they're pregnant. So this is important also for other areas of nutrition to know that if we go more than a few weeks without an adequate nutrient intake, there will be some consequences for babe. So we will talk about how best to make sure we're getting all of the nutrients we need during each trimester. Beginning in the first trimester, even though there is so much happening in terms of baby's development, there's actually not a huge energy cost or calorie cost to mom. In the first trimester, so in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, on average, women may gain anywhere from 0 pounds to just maybe a few pounds of weight. And that is really because there isn't a lot of growth or tissue development in that first trimester. There is no additional calorie need in the first trimester. And again, this is because there is a very limited energy cost for the mom. In terms of specific nutrients, some nutrients are needed in higher amounts even though there's no need for higher calories, and some nutrients aren't needed in higher amounts during the first trimester. The first nutrient that is needed in higher amount is carbohydrate. We know that baby's brain will eat up approximately 50 grams of carbohydrate per day in the first trimester. So the mom needs to make sure she's ingesting enough carbohydrate for that, as well as for her own fuel. So to make sure that she has enough for her own brain, her red blood cells, cells within her eye, some of these cells that can only use carbohydrate as fuel. So the recommendation for carbohydrate in the first trimester is 175 grams per day. This highlights the fact that certain diets, such as low-carb diets or keto diets, are absolutely not appropriate during pregnancy. A typical keto diet provides no more than 40 to 50 grams of carbs per day, which would not even supply baby's brain needs at that point. So it's important that mom is getting enough starches, enough breads, rices, quinoas, potatoes, fruits, vegetables, every day, every meal, every snack to provide enough carbohydrate. In terms of protein, there are actually no additional protein needs in the first trimester. So mom needs to make sure she's getting enough for her own body, perhaps the same amount that she was getting pre-pregnancy, but nothing additional is needed by the fetus. In terms of fat, there isn't a requirement for more fat in the first trimester, but there is a requirement for specific types of fat. In particular, we need higher levels of DHA and EPA, which are two types of omega-3 fats. These fats play a crucial role in baby's brain development and also help with absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, so the vitamins A, D, E, and K. In order to make sure that you are getting enough DHA and EPA to fuel baby's brain development, it's recommended that pregnant women eat 2 to 3 servings of fish or seafood every week. There is sometimes some concern about mercury levels in fish and seafood, and while this can be a concern, there are a variety of species that are very low mercury. So for example, skipjack or white tuna that's canned is actually low mercury. Tuna such as canned albacore tuna is one that we would want to avoid because it's high mercury. Fresh salmon, trout are really good have really good levels of omega-3 and as well have really low levels of mercury and other pollutants. If women don't eat fish, it would be recommended to have an omega-3, specifically a DHA EPA supplement, but it is important to note that studies seem to indicate that there might not actually be any benefit from these supplements. However, we do know that getting adequate DHA and EPA is important, so there's certainly no harm to doing a supplement if having fish is not something that you can do. Folate is another nutrient that is important. We've talked about the fact that folate becomes important even before women conceive, and it becomes really important right after conception, so often before a woman even knows she's pregnant. Generally, women want to aim for 600 to 800 micrograms of folate per day. So we get folate from food sources known as foliage. So that's how to remember where folate is from. So these would be things like leafy greens, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. Basically, most plant-based sources have lots of folate in. Because folate's so important, we actually recommend women have a folate supplement even if they have a high intake of these types of foods. And in general, we're looking for a 400 to 800 microgram methylfolate supplement. And this is generally what would be found in a prenatal. Choline is another nutrient that has gained a lot of attention in the past couple of years. I do think that over the next few years, we will start seeing choline added to prenatals in much the same way that folate is now added to all prenatals. It does assist in baby's brain development similarly to folate, and it is something that a lot of women are not getting enough of. Approximately 90% of North American women who are pregnant are not getting enough choline. Because of this, we do recommend all women, even women who are eating bacon and eggs and meat daily, we recommend all women get a choline supplement in the amounts of approximately 400 to 450 milligrams per day. This is generally not something that's added to a prenatal, so it is something that you would have to buy on top of a prenatal. B6 is a nutrient that helps with creating the uterine lining for implantation and is really important for women to get enough of. In general, women who are eating enough protein get enough B6 because every protein source, whether it's plant-based or animal-based, has B6 in it. However, there is some evidence that higher levels of B6 from a supplement may be useful for women who are experiencing extreme morning sickness. So there has been some evidence that supplementation at, let's say, a 5 to 10 milligrams per day can help decrease these symptoms. It is something you should speak with your doctor about first if you are experiencing extreme morning sickness. Vitamin D supports baby's bone development as well as teeth and other areas of development. It is estimated that approximately a third of North American women who are pregnant aren't getting enough vitamin D. We often think that we can get enough vitamin D from the sun, but we don't realize that there's a variety of criteria that have to be filled in order for our skin to be able to make enough vitamin D with sun exposure. So some of those conditions are based on how much of our skin is exposed, and so we have to have the majority of our skin exposed. It has to be a sunny day outside. We have to be outside, not in the shade or in a building. We have to actually be out in repeated bouts of 15 minutes per day because after 15 minutes, that skin precursor does degrade and no more vitamin D synthesis occurs. And we can't be wearing sunscreen, which of course could increase our risk of skin cancer and other conditions. So there are many women that vitamin D from sun exposure isn't a significant part of their vitamin D status. In general, women should be looking for at least 600 IUs of vitamin D in a prenatal, but this is assuming that they are getting enough vitamin D from food. Vitamin D is really only found in a handful of foods. It's found in foods such as fatty fish, like salmon, and it's found in fortified dairy. If we're not eating enough of those things, we likely need significantly more than 600 IUs of vitamin D. In addition, because so many women are deficient in vitamin D before pregnancy even starts, needs for supplementation might be as high as 4,000 IUs per day. So it's always a good idea to speak with your doctor and get your labs tested to make sure that you are not vitamin D deficient and to really make sure that we're getting the right amount during pregnancy. There's also some evidence that vitamin D deficiency might be related to some cases of miscarriage and preterm delivery. So it is a really important nutrient to make sure we're getting enough of, as well as making sure that we're assessing our blood levels to correct any deficiency that might exist. Calcium is another nutrient that's needed in higher amounts during pregnancy, and the biggest reason is just for the formation of the bones and the skeleton within the baby. Calcium needs go up by about 200 to 300 milligrams per day during pregnancy. We can meet this by looking for a prenatal that has approximately 250 milligrams in it, and in addition having about 3 to 4 good calcium sources per day from food. So these sources would be any dairy, it would be any fortified non-dairy, so certain nut-based milks, for example, are fortified with calcium. Things like seeds or leafy greens or tofu can also provide quite a bit of calcium for women. Iron is another nutrient that is so commonly deficient in women and one that is so vital to both baby and mom. We know that low iron, particularly in the first trimester, increases risk of preterm delivery by 2 to 3 times. We also know that low iron intake in women can actually impact baby 5 years into their life. So low iron intake during pregnancy has been associated with lower IQ scores, attention problems, language delays in children at age 5. Iron needs increase significantly during pregnancy and including the first trimester. Pre-pregnancy, women need 18 milligrams per day. As soon as they become pregnant, they need 27 milligrams per day. Iron can be a hard one to get as it's found mostly in meat, fish, and poultry, although some plant-based sources such as nuts, seeds, and beans are also good sources. Eggs, too, are a good source. It is generally recommended that we try to meet that entire 28 milligram need in a prenatal. So looking for a prenatal that has ideally 28 milligrams of iron can ensure that you're getting enough iron, and hopefully any top-ups that you get from food will only help. Finally, there's a nutrient that we are actually concerned with high intakes of during pregnancy, and that's vitamin A. So vitamin A can be very serious and very harmful to the fetus if taken in high levels. In general, we want to make sure that our prenatal has no more than 5,000 IUs of vitamin A in it. Most prenatals will not have this amount, but I certainly have had clients who have been on vitamin A supplements pre-pregnancy and just continued to take them during pregnancy without realizing how harmful that they can be. So making sure that you're not taking any supplements or things like medications such as Accutane when you are pregnant. There are a variety of nutrients that are needed in higher amounts during the first trimester. This is due not only to increased use by the fetus, but as well some of the changes in metabolism that happen in the mom and changes in some of her tissues, such as the uterus, her increases in blood volume. These nutrients are important to get at specific times and making sure that we get the right amounts during the first trimester is important for adequate development and a successful pregnancy. It is important to remember that our body is a wonderful machine and is also good at withstanding small deficiencies in intake by shunting any nutrition to the baby. So on days where you aren't feeling well and aren't eating what you need, it doesn't mean you're doing any harm to your baby. But when you are feeling well, and most days out of the week, we want to make sure that we're getting these increased nutrients during the first trimester.